So, the other day, a member of the House of Lords, rather oddly and altogether childishly, blocked me on Twitter after I asked her what I thought was a very simple and straightforward question. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, I should say from the outset that I am a fully grown adult, so, whatever. But as this particular member of our parliamentary process purports to be a champion of equality and has publicly accused an actually democratically elected member of the very same parliamentary process of not being fit for purpose, I thought I'd take a couple of short moments to reflect on her point of view, at least to the extent that I, a humble citizen of the realm and apparently somewhat creepy and faceless avatar, am able to comprehend it. So for the uninitiated, Meryl Hussein-ece, or more properly Baroness Hussein-ece OBE, is confusingly both a member of the British Liberal Democrats and an entirely unelected member of the House of Lords. She's never actually been a democratically elected member of our parliamentary process, but happily at an earlier stage of her esteemed career, somebody did actually vote to put her in public office, specifically the Labour voting constituents of Hackney Council, and later the Liberal Democrat voting constituents of their neighbours in Islington. In 2010, she was elevated into the House of Lords, and in 2015 she was briefly the Liberal Democrats' entirely undemocratically elected spokesperson for equalities, and a member of Tim Farron's much maligned and democratically speaking unsuccessful Liberal Democrat team. Anywho, a little while ago, the Baroness took to social media to very publicly call out the 4 times democratically elected Member of Parliament for Shipley and accuse him of not being fit to be an MP. And the reason for this was that she had apparently just finished a private Zoom meeting with other parliamentarians to discuss the domestic abuse bill that is currently travelling through Parliament. And during the meeting, she was informed that the, and I quote, appalling Philip Davis, Tory MP, has once again put down a string of wrecking amendments designed to undermine the bill and women's safety. Now, obviously, the obvious question or response to this statement was to ask specifically what wrecking amendments is the Baroness on about, and what are her specific objections. But predictably, this particular peer of the realm didn't care to clarify her thinking to a lowly pleb like me, and after I proposed that she wasn't behaving like an especially effective spokesperson on equality, that was the end of that. And so, for the benefit of anyone who is as confused as me by this very Karen-esque behaviour, here are the so-called wrecking amendments that has vexed the members so-called wrecking amendments that are preceded by a few short words from the Baroness's former Hackney colleague.
And to any women and men at home today who are watching this debate, I think the message of this House to you is, you are not alone.
Thank you very much, Diane Abbott. Philip Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Following on from the second reading debate on the previous incarnation of this bill, I've now been able to actually draft some of the amendments I mentioned, which I believe will help improve it. I don't have much time today, but I just want to highlight a few of these at this stage. As I've said on numerous occasions, one of my biggest priorities on the issue of domestic abuse is that we must treat male and female victims equally. Some of my amendments are about ensuring that this bill is completely non-sex specific and that it supports both male and female victims. Whilst there are more recorded female victims of domestic abuse, there are still many male victims, with a further body of evidence showing how their numbers are also likely to be underestimated. They should not be ignored. I really do want to reiterate for the record that we need to be very clear that women are not the only victims of domestic violence, and that violence against women is not always perpetrated by men either. I have grave concerns about the definition of domestic abuse, including economic abuse. The government's own guidance on this says examples of economic abuse include having sole control of the family income. I'm not sure why that should in itself constitute domestic abuse, and I hope that the amendment I will table can at least alleviate the potential damage this current wording could do, as it is not caveated by saying that this does not apply where, for example, there is good reason. There could be a very good reason for something that could be classed as economic abuse under this definition. For example, where the person the money is being withheld from has a drug problem or a gambling addiction, or because they're too sick. I've spoken to the Secretary of State about this, and I got the impression that he felt that there was something that he could do to improve the wording here. And I sincerely hope the government will look favourably on the amendment I'm tabling on this very point. Another amendment I will be tabling extends the definition of domestic abuse to include parental alienation. This is where one parent deliberately alienates the other parent from the child. I have heard horrific stories affecting parents and children, which I would love to expand on today, but cannot because of the time available. However, to save future generations of children from having non-existent relationships with one of their parents, something needs to be done, and my amendment would be a start. I also want to amend the bill so that false allegations of domestic abuse will be classed as domestic abuse in their own right. Some parents can have their reputations and lives trashed by malicious, vexatious accusations, particularly in relation to domestic abuse. By including false allegations of domestic abuse in the definition of domestic abuse, we can hopefully reduce the instances of this occurring. I think the definition of domestic abuse should also include cases where one parent deliberately denies the other parent contact with their children for no good reason. As far as I'm concerned, this is just as abusive as other forms of abuse regularly mentioned, causing significant distress, upset, and harm. In some cases, the harm is so bad, it can tragically lead to suicide. This leads me on to the current situation. According to the charity Mankind, a number of fathers are now contacting the charity, stating that their exes are using the COVID-19 lockdown as a reason to breach agreed child arrangement orders awarded as part of shared parenting. There have been media reports of lawyers being inundated by divorced parents arguing over lockdown custody. It is always wrong to use a child as a weapon, but it seems that coronavirus has made things worse on this front too. In terms of domestic abuse generally during this pandemic, I have heard a lot about female victims on the news, quite rightly so, and from women's organisations, but not so much about male victims. So I thought I would mention them today, given the limited time available. According to the charity Mankind, calls to their helpline since lockdown are 30% higher than normal, and visitors to the Mankind Initiative website are 50% higher. I hope that any victims of domestic abuse, male or female, call the police and get in touch with individuals or organisations that can help them in these difficult times. Meanwhile, can I urge the Minister to consider my amendments properly, as I genuinely believe they will improve this bill, not least by making it fairer for male victims as well as female victims, but also by providing a chance of improving the lives of children too. Thank you.
So, for the uninitiated, and at least according to Wikipedia, in legislative debate, a wrecking amendment is an amendment made by a legislator who disagrees with the principles or purpose of a bill, and who seeks to make it useless rather than simply voting against it. A crucial characteristic of wrecking amendments is that they're not moved in good faith, and the proposer would still not vote in favour of the bill, even if their amendments were accepted. Significantly, Wikipedia also notes that some opponents of particular amendments will describe them as wrecking amendments because they personally regard them as somehow problematic, or even genuinely believe that they would undermine the original purpose of the bill. And to be honest, having considered the detail of Mr. Davis's amendments, I have to say that I'm none the wiser as to exactly why it is that the Baroness believes they could undermine the bill, how they could negatively impact on women's safety, or indeed why she thinks Philip Davis is unfit to be an MP. So I have written to her seeking some clarification, and as it's probably prudent not to hold my breath waiting for a more meaningful, adult, and frankly ladylike reply, it occurs to me that there is one very simple way to clear this matter up. Because speaking as someone with over 2 decades of experience of combating discrimination and championing universal human rights, it strikes me that Philip Davis's amendments would very much improve the proposed bill, specifically by embedding and emphasising the basic principle of equal treatment for all victims of abuse. Furthermore, I fail to see how they could remotely undermine or wreck the bill's stated purpose, which according to the minister who introduced it, is to transform the response to domestic abuse by helping to prevent offending, protect victims, and ensure that they have the support they need. And I can't see how any Member of Parliament would have a problem supporting amendments that strengthen the support for all victims of abuse, including those that have to date all too often and all too easily find themselves being mocked and overlooked.
It happens to men too, you know.
It happens to men.
Do you want a point? It happens to men as well. Oh, yeah, okay.
Which is why I would encourage those of you living in the United Kingdom to write to your Member of Parliament asking them to vote in favour of these amendments. And to do that most effectively, I would encourage you to sign up to a campaign coordinated by Unity for Men, who, for the uninitiated, are a new think tank and campaign group led by Philip Tanzer, who I recently interviewed for the Talking Sense Not Sensibility series. Unity for Men have developed a template letter asking members of Parliament to support the proposed amendments when the bill comes before the House. And they hope to coordinate meaningful engagement with all 650 democratically elected members at a local level. And to do this, they need the help of 650 local constituents willing to contact their local MP. I've included contact details in the low bar, and if you want to sign up for the campaign, simply send a quick email with the heading MP Letter Campaign, confirming your postcode, your constituency, and the name of your MP. Philip will then send you a template letter and make a note of any response that you receive. The Glass Blind Spot will keep you posted on any major developments, including obviously any clarification from the Baroness about why Philip Davis and his equality championing amendments really do vex her so. Because surely the message we want to hear from our elected officials, the message that any woman or man or children experiencing domestic violence deserve to hear loud and clear from all of us, including both Houses of Parliament, is that you are not alone.
Can't you see it too? There's an elephant in the room.